Innovation's happening because of these regulations, not in spite of them.
Join Panita, where we talk on the Techful Founder podcast. Empower your startup journey as a non-technical founder with actionable insights from successful entrepreneurs. Today's guest is an absolute expert in the world of policy and regulation. Rachel Byfleet is here to shed light on the biggest mistakes that startups make and how they can navigate the complex regulatory landscape. Rachel, welcome to the show. What's the biggest mistake startups make when trying to comply with regulations, and how can they avoid it?
I work a lot on policy and regulation, and I think often leaders underestimate how quickly a long-term compliance timeline is going to sneak up on them. So, for example, GDPR, before it was implemented, they have years and years of time before they have to make any initial moves, but it does sneak up on leaders, and I think people find themselves rushing to make these major changes that feel really last minute. And so I think because it might feel a bit daunting to comply or, these long timelines that founders get, the general advice is to start early, even if it feels ages away.
A lot of founders, they wait to do the legal stuff a bit later on, and just starting from day one is good advice.
It feels expensive and you have to really dedicate quite a lot of time to it. So I actually feel for them. But I think procrastination is not your friend because it's actually quite costly.
What should founders think about building a startup that stays adaptable to evolving policies, whether local or global?
Adaptability comes from staying informed and being proactive. Following the work happening behind the scenes in the regulatory spaces can give the runway to prepare for challenges. It's so time consuming and it's really hard to keep your finger on everything that's happening. And that's a big part of what I do in my job. So I think one way to get around this is to partner with organizations who might be able to help provide that extra expertise, and then they can guide where the industry is headed and help you build accordingly. It's a big task to take on yourself.
Just had a legal expert come on the podcast, and he also said that the best thing is to find someone else who's an expert.
You don't really want to be messing around with, I think this might be what this is saying, or this seems a little bit complex, but I'll just do this, because getting caught out is the worst thing. So I think being really sure and being able to lean on someone else's expertise is key.
For early stage founders, what are the first steps to navigating a regulatory landscape that they know little about?
Yeah, I think regulations can seem intimidating. In my work with Mint Blue, my role is to break down complex regulations and make compliance easy to navigate by making checklists and making them into bite-sized pieces. So I think, again, partnering with these organizations is super key. But then I also think identifying which regulations impact your business directly, build your own timeline, figure out what the immediate steps are, what the long-term implications are. And there's so many resources on the internet. Most of them are free if you don't want to get legal advice. I know there's a lot always happening on founders' plates. So I think, just doing an initial research if you just put in the time in the initial research phase, you can come out with a few key actions. Yeah.
Definitely. So just at least have some research done to ensure that you don't fall behind.
Yeah, I think so. It could just be a Google search, just to spend a few hours going through what other people have done. There, you could really just land on a checklist ready to go for you if you have a little look around.
How can founders communicate technical or policy-driven aspects of their startups to investors and customers?
I come from a comms background and moved into policy. The best way is to make it as simple as possible. Not everybody's going to want to be in the weeds with this stuff. I definitely know that from my work communicating with MPs or politicians or government. They just want to know really quickly why and how. And it's the same for customers. Why does this benefit them? Because in most instances, the compliance and regulation aspect does benefit them. So, for example, there's that trend of wanting to buy ethical at the moment. And then you've got the new digital product passport regulation in the EU. And customers can literally see the life cycle of their product, which will help them make better decisions and shop more ethically. So just making it relevant to the user without getting technical lingo is key. It makes it accessible for everyone. Yeah.
Definitely. So simple and accessible language.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Not everybody has time to read those long form opinion pieces or dig into it. Sometimes, fair enough.
What strategies can non technical founders use to break down policy and compliance tasks without feeling overwhelmed?
There are so many good resources out there. The EU is doing a really good job of trying to make it so that these complex pieces of legislation are digestible, and that can be in short explainers, easy to understand articles. If policy is not your expertise, there are loads of experts that you can lean on. I recently helped Mint Blue create a compliance checklist for the Data Act, Data Governance Act, and other significant legislation under the EU data strategy. And I think all of this is available on its website. So I just know from my own experience, it's just free resources that companies are willing to put out and help you with the more in-depth pieces if you need them. Yeah.
So look for free resources from reputable people, essentially.
Yeah. And I think if you need more background or you need that legal help or you're interested in using certain technologies, that's when you can shoulder tap to get the expertise from the organization.
What role does emerging tech like blockchain play in addressing global challenges like food security?
I work in food security, seeing how blockchain is integrated into that. Yeah, I think it's getting loads more media attention, more attention in general. And we're just seeing so much innovation with how blockchain can solve some of these problems. One new solution I mentioned was digital product passports. This tool creates transparent supply chains. And so it helps consumers make these informed decisions, whether it could be, let's say, you want to know if your tuna is dolphin safe, is your honey from a single source, is the jackfruit from another country? Is the environmental impact worth it? It creates transparency, credibility, and trust with organizations and companies. Chain's already making big moves in the food space. The World Food Program's building blocks is the humanitarian sector's largest blockchain-based system. And last year, it was used to coordinate 65 organizations across Ukraine. And the whole goal is to reduce kind of duplicating resources, using things as efficiently as possible. And it reduced, it reduced cost up to 70 million US dollars in savings. And I guess that's just kind of one way we can see blockchain streamlining this humanitarian aid and just making sure that we can make the most of the resources. There's this perception that aid can feel like a leaky bucket. And I think blockchain just puts parameters around that and makes sure that we know where things are going. You can't change the ledger. It's immutable. It's very trustworthy. And so I think we need to see the change in the food system, reduce waste, ensure there's equitable distribution. And just using our resources more wisely, I think is key. And it's just really fun to see how blockchain's working its way into this space and can really transform it at a global scale.
Definitely more transparency and trust.
Knowing where our resources are going, sometimes it feels a bit like an empty can of worms. You just don't know where things are going. So I think that kind of builds the parameters around it. Yeah.
Definitely. So for founders looking to build startups with social impact, how should they balance innovation with compliance?
Yeah. Some see compliance as a limiting factor. In my view, if you want to operate in regulated environments like the EU, compliance is not really a constraint, but more of the baseline. It's something you have to work within. For GDPR or Digital Services Act, they seem restrictive and work heavy. But then I guess in turn, they've created a really good framework that pushes companies to build products with transparency and accountability and then make those more user-centric. So I think they've raised the bar for what good looks like in tech rather than sacrificing innovation. Innovation is happening because of these regulations, not in spite of them. Companies are developing new ways to handle data privacy, user consent, transparency, and making it part of the social impact mission. And so I guess I'd see these more as guardrails that drive better and more sustainable innovation rather than limiting organizations from doing their best work. So hopefully it's integrated throughout the mission rather than feeling like a ceiling for what you can achieve.
It helps companies build trust with users rather than limiting innovation.
We all want to own our data. It's putting a little bit more of a rule book in place, which helps people like you and I just do more and feel comfortable with what we're using. Yeah.
Definitely. So, can you share a real world example of how technology has been used to solve societal issues while navigating regulatory challenges?
Yeah. So I think One example is a company called DocFlow, which Mint Blue does the back-end technology for. And it is a really cool platform. That means that it does more than manage just the process of supply chain, but it also empowers the team to work smarter, collaborate better in supply chain management. It might help users anticipate more disruptions, use data to make better decisions. And then again, with transparency across those supply chains, I think is just really key. With the introduction of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive in the EU, we could call that CSRD just for ease. The organizations operating in the EU are now required to report on their carbon footprint. DocFlow embeds that technology into the platform so organizations can meet those reporting requirements in real time. And it's all powered by blockchain. So again, it's that traceability, the trust, and the tamper-proof records. It just means that organizations can very easily report sustainability metrics with ease. And it's just really, it takes away the complicated aspects of it. And so I guess this shows how technology can be used to not just meet compliance, but to support better decision making and how regulation can be a springboard for innovation.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to founders intimidated by the legal and technical aspects of building a startup?
Yeah, it feels like a spider web of daunting regulations, but I think the best thing is to not overcomplicate it. You open up the EU's Data Act and read it word for word. That's going to feel heavy and complicated. It's a huge piece of legislation. But if you use the tools and organizations that have already put in that groundwork for you to help you comply, I just think it'll help you use your energy in your own area of expertise, something you might feel a little bit more passionate about. Hopefully, it doesn't feel as daunting, but there are people whose job it is to support you.
You don't need to consume a bunch of information, just the right ones. So, what's a lesson you've learned from working at the intersection of policy and technology that surprised you?
A few of my worlds have collided recently, and I've learned that outdated technology or a lack of technology can significantly exacerbate poverty. So, for example, I am based in London and I work a lot on the school food system. And at the moment, we're trying to push for legislation to automatically enroll children for free school meals, which is a very simple fix. It just means that one government department needs to share the data with another, and then they can automatically enroll children in low income households to access their legal entitlement to a free school meal. And this is impacting up to 250,000 children who are living in quite low income households. But because of complex paperwork and old fashioned paper trails and outdated systems, kids are really suffering. And you can see that their entitlement to that one solid meal a day is taken away from them because of a lack of investment and innovation from the government. I think coming up against a roadblock and working as a policy consultant for Mint Blue has shown me how important technology is and how just the right investment from government and the right buy-in can just make such a huge difference. It can remove barriers for people who are struggling in a meaningful way. Recently, I've seen how my two worlds are colliding and how bureaucracy and just like really outdated systems can be replaced by robust systems. And we shouldn't really be afraid of technology. It can completely enhance fairness and access. So we just need to keep on innovating. And we don't want government to fall behind what's happening in the rest of the world, I think.
Definitely. So, innovation should be happening in all sectors because it can benefit everyone.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
I think this is a great point to finish the podcast. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me and for all the scheduling.